Hello, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started because we've got a lot of great things to take a look at this afternoon. So, my name is Kaylee McMahon, and on behalf of the ZSR Library Lecture Series, I would like to welcome you to Nina's talk today on African American choreographers. And I'd like to also extend an invitation to you to come back. Throughout the spring semester, we do one of these lectures every month, and there's a schedule on the website, and also you'll see around the building the different lectures that are coming up. So I would invite you guys to come back for those in the future. They're usually Thursday afternoons at 3 at the same time, so I would invite you to do that. Let's see. I've had the pleasure of working with Nina for the last few years as the library liaison to the theater and dance department, and it's my pleasure to introduce her to you guys today. She's been here since 1996 and is the director of dance, the artistic director of the dance company, and an associate professor of dance. She teaches dance technique classes as well as teaching dance history courses, and this kind of developed, I think, out of one of her African American choreography classes that she taught 2 years ago, something like that.
Thanks, yeah.
So she's going to talk today about African American choreographers and how they took various styles in American dance and African dance and created a new dance field.
Yeah.
Thank you. Out of that. So please join me in welcoming Nina Lucas.
First, let me say, if you need to get up and go to the bathroom, I don't have a problem with that at all. If you need to leave early, go and come. And if people come in late, just flag them on in because I won't see them, I won't notice them. It doesn't bother me at all. I'd like to thank a couple of people. I'd like to thank Mary Reeves and Caroline McCullum. Is that right? Yeah. For inviting me back this year. I did this presentation last year, and so I'm excited that they wanted me to come back. And also like to thank the Department of Theater and Dance, my colleagues and friends, for their support throughout the years. I went back and forth, but they've been very supportive of me because I keep running down the hall and go, well, okay, I think I'm going to do this tomorrow, and they're like, okay, Nina, just narrow it down, make up your mind. So this year, last year when I did it, I covered like at least 8 artists, and it was in the 20s and 30s and so forth. And what I like to do now is just focus on 3 particular artists and their work and show you some clips of their work as best I can. And end with Alvin Ailey. I'm going to talk about Tally Beatty. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with him. Donald McHale, which I got a chance to work with him when I was on sabbatical, and Mr. Alvin Ailey. I would like to say that the Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater is celebrating their 50-year anniversary, so it's a big thing for them and major accomplishments. Let me start with Tally Beatty and talk about him for a little bit. I find Tally Beatty to be really fascinating. He is a wonderful choreographer, and he started out his career at the age of 14 years old. He actually was born in Louisiana, grew up in Chicago, Illinois, and became connected with Katherine Dunham. Katherine Dunham had a big company, and she was also into isolation of body parts in African dance forms and Caribbean dance forms. So he became a part of her company at the age of 14. I must mention that he also studied cakewalking, which is an old African form that came over and was actually created during the slave time, during plantation era, from UB Blake. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with the UB Awards that are giving away, so that's kind of cool to know. But anyway, he joined her troupe at the age of 14. It was in 1937, and he stayed with her maybe 6 years. He stayed with her to 1943, performing in all of her works and also performing at the famous 92nd Street YMHA, which is a very popular place that people like to go and perform at even today. He performed in Katherine Dunham's Tropics, Lehigh Jazz, and also he ended his career with the Katherine Dunham Company performing in Stormy Weather, which is a famous black movie that appeared in 1943. He wanted to continue to experiment with choreography, finding his voice. All these artists trying to find their voice, what they're going to talk about. And each and every one of them are actually influenced by what's happening socially and politically during the time period in the 30s and 40s. So he got a role in the Broadway musical Cabin in the Sky, dancing with Katherine Dunham and Ethel Waters. He was also in Showboat, if anyone's familiar with that particular production. And then he also danced in a production called Blackface, and this was produced by the Ballet Society, which Lou Christensen was the choreographer of this time. Lou Christensen actually did Waltz of the Flowers, if you're familiar with the Nutcracker. And the Ballet Society was the beginning of one of the former companies before the development of the New York City Ballet. So it was founded by Balanchine. So anyway, after performing blackface, he was, kind of bothered by this portrayal and the use of blackface, and he wanted to figure out what else he could do. So he began to play around with ideas and work with choreographers in terms of dance for the camera and just exploring his vocabulary and so forth. When he performed, he was always written by the critics about him that he had this amazing ballet technique compared to the other dancers in the Dunham Company. So he goes on and he creates his first work, which is Southern Landscapes. And you can tell by the titles of the sections, there's about 5 sections to it, what they might be about. Like one of them is called Freedom Road, the other is The Mourner's Bench, My Hair Was Wet with the Mountain Dew, Ring Shout, which is another African dance form, and Sitting Up. Mourner's Bench is probably one of the most used piece of choreography today that's put into the repertory of companies like Cleo Parker Robinson and Dallas Black Dance Theater and Alvin Ailey's company too. He decided then, like most artists, I'm going to form a company because you need a crew of people to be able to showcase your work. And he formed his own company in the United States, and he actually toured Europe for a little bit. He didn't hold on to it very long. I think it must have been 4 or 5 years. But within that, he created Tropicana, which actually featured Latin choreography and African American themes within the production. With the civil rights coming up in the 50s and the 60s, he was affected by that. So his next work, actually, the Road to Phoebe Snow, was centered around the Lackawanna Railroad and the issues that were happening down in that part of town. And he kind of grew up there, so he was very familiar with it. And he came up with the name Phoebe Snow because it was actually on the side of one of the freight cars. But again, slowly being influenced by what's happening in society. He was very close to Duke Ellington, and so there's stories about how they set up late at night coming up with choreography. Not so much Duke, more so Tally Beatty, and just playing around with ideas. So he did create a couple of works to music by Duke Ellington during his career. His most successful and strongest achievement was The Road to Phoebe Snow, which he actually got a chance to set it on the Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater in 1964. Other works that he created on the company were Montgomery Variations and Black Belt, and I'm just throwing out a bunch of different names here. But he had a strong and long, fruitful collaboration relationship with the Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater, and also with Duke Ellington. His work has been seen at American College Dance Festival. Today, he serves mostly as a teacher and a choreographer, going back and restaging his works that he's created over a period of time on dancers. He also dabbled in a little bit in the stage productions. And these are old productions from the 70s, but he actually created the choreography for Your Arms Are Too Short to Box with God. Anybody remember that one? And another one is Never Jam Today, which is in 78. And these are really great works. He and Donald McHale actually kind of crossed over a whole lot into the Broadway era and the television and film era. His last greatest work with the Ailey Company was called Stack Up. And Stack Up, he did a lot of research. This is during the 80s when discotheques were out and nice and hot. I think it was late 70s, early 80s. This is when Studio 54 was really popular. I don't know if you guys remember that. And he would go and sit in these clubs and just observe people. And so this piece is based around urban life, the disco life, and what happens to a young man when he starts doing drugs and how it affects him throughout this his personal lifespan, or the lifespan within this piece. In this piece, he has characters like he has a street gang, and then he has the lovers, and he has the pusher, and all these amazing characters within this. So that was another piece that he set on the Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater. I'd like to show you just a short 6-minute clip of Great Performances, Free to Dance, which is a series of 3 videotapes that covers African American choreographers throughout the centuries. And this one particularly is called Steps from the Gods. And it has an excerpt, it has a little bit of Tally Beatty talking, nobody can do it better than him, talking about his work, and also you'll get to see a little clip of Mourner's Bench. So that's okay? We'll do that.
Is this thing in jeopardy?
Oh, no, nothing's in jeopardy. A select few, however, seek their own individual voice in dance. One of Dunham's original dancers, Tally Beatty, is among the first of her company to strike out on his own.
People who left her
if they formed a company of their own, they were doing a weak imitation of Katherine Dunham, except one person, Tally Beattie. He was the best dancer that she had. When Tally branched out on his own, he made wonderful works. Tally had power, he had excitement, and he had an amazing technique.
Beattie studies and experiments intensely, applying his extensive dance knowledge to create provocative choreography.
I can make up steps, I can choreograph a dance very simply, but to really create a dance from an idea and to hold to the idea and show my blackness, that interests me most.
In his first choreography, Beattie reaches for a highly emotional and technical effect. It is clearly seen in his early solos.
I don't think anyone quite danced with such passion as Tally. It was so complete. He was a complete artist in his dance, and all of his passions went into his movements.
In 1947, Beattie creates The Mourner's Bench, where the dancer meditates about a life lost through racial violence. It is a sharp departure from his work with Dunham.
It's sitting on the mourner's bench. Then it's a personal expression of grief. And he is thinking upon the events of the day. And he's just moving across the bench and looking out, moving across the bench.
He would go to a place within himself. It was startling to watch him do it.
It feels good to give yourself over to the dance, to just let your spirit go on that journey, being connected to the divine in the way that you're connected to that when you shout, when you praise in church.
The stage is the place where I feel free, where I feel like I can be vulnerable. I can just kind of strip away layers of stuff and open myself out. We are called to do what we do, and because of that, there is a love there, there's a pull there, there's emotionality there. You reach the full spectrum of possibility, of emotion within one day.
Critics praise the Mourner's Bench for its passion and masculinity.
I'm going to stop tape. That was beautiful, huh? Just, I don't need to say anything, and we're done. Thank you. Let's go to McDonald's. Tally Beatty. So if you ever get a chance to see his work being shown around, please, you know what you're getting ready to see. And he's still living and still out wandering around doing guest teaching, so it's wonderful. The next artist I want to talk about is my favorite. I have a big crush on him. I think I mentioned this last year, but don't tell him I said that. It's the wonderful Donald McKell, and he's kind of like this person that just has been around. You hear his name forever, but you're not really sure, but he has a million pieces of work. Tally Beatty did over 40 pieces of choreography and 10 theatrical productions, whereas, and not that it's less than, but Donald McKell has done so much, and it's still sometimes people just don't exactly know who he is, but he's absolutely breathtaking. He's done over 70 pieces of choreography, and he's worked in film, television, stage acts, I mean, you name it, film, TV, I get everything? Yeah. Let me talk about him just a little bit. Born in the 30s, still living. He's one of the most influential African-American choreographers during this time. He's worked at Juilliard and Bennington College, just to name a few. American Dance Festival was a place that he was always showing up at in the summers at Duke and teaching. And he had his strongest connection at the Los Angeles Inner-City Cultural Arts Center. I remember that when I lived in LA. I used to hang out with, not with him, so I still didn't hang out. He was like, get away, little girl. And he also worked with the California State Institute of the Arts, which he was appointed artistic director for a while. So he's been around. Currently, he's a professor at the University of California, Irvine. And so during my sabbatical, I got a chance to go hang out with him and stalk him and go to rehearsal and take him to lunch and stalk him and drive my car behind him, you know. But I got to see him work. He's just beautiful and passionate, confident and comfortable, and he's a big man, you know, and his wife is a flamenco dancer, and they're just happy and life is great. But his work is all about the human experience, you know, and dealing with, and as the centuries, the 10 years change, he deals with political issues or socialist issues or different. I mean, and it actually is not just African American, but it feeds into all the other aspects or all the other cultures too. Just to talk about him, his little bit about his background. He saw Pearl Primus perform, and he was smitten. You know, that was it. He was about 17, I think, and he was in high school. It was a senior year, and he went to the New Dance Group, which was this organization in New York City that funded classes and so forth, and scholarships, and then all the big names would come through there and teach. And so he went to this audition. He tells the story. He went in. He was totally wearing the wrong thing. I don't think he had on shorts and who knows, high-knee socks or something. And he didn't know what to expect or what he was doing. And he was just all over the place auditioning. But they gave him a scholarship. And therefore, he became part of the New Dance Group and got his chance to train under Sophie Maslow and Pearl Primus, just to name a couple of artists that were there. During the same year, he made his professional debut with the New Dance Group. And he was ambitious. So like 2 years later, he was all, 21, maybe 20? And nothing wrong with that. He founded the Contemporary Dance Group, and he worked with Daniel Negrin and this wonderful Jewish lady named Helen Tamaris, and they were instrumental in helping African Americans pave the way for themselves in terms of careers and finding work and so forth. But they kind of collaborated together and created this production. And in this production, he created his first work called Games. And I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with this. It's a really popular piece. And this is, it premiered at Hunter College, and it featured, of course, Daniel Negrin and Helen Tamaris and a lot of other dancers. But Games focuses around children playing. You ever look outside at the playground, the kids are out there playing? Remember we used to sing songs and play with rocks? Like we didn't have iPods or anything like that. We had 7 rocks and 2 sticks. Or we played hopscotch and so forth. So it deals with children, not necessarily, the cast members are not young. He actually doesn't like them to be very young at all, likes older, mature people, but it's just children living in an urban environment and some of the things they say. And he intertwines this into his choreography and these games that they play. And even though they're not children, you get the sense that they are children. They're playful, their energy, their imaginations, and the fears that they suffer through on a daily basis that we probably don't pay any attention to. On a more political note, he created a piece called Her Name Was Harriet, based on Harriet Tubman and the Underground Railroad. And then he decided he wanted to pursue a career as a performer, just do that instead of choreographing. So he got a scholarship with the Martha Graham School of Dance, and then was taken into her company. He danced with her, I think, a year. And from that point on, he actually became a free agent, working with several different artists like Martha Graham, Maurice Cunningham. So he's tasted a lot of different particular styles. But his focus and his passion was always choreography. And in 1959, some years later, he created a famous work called Rainbow Around My Shoulders on the Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater. And Rainbow Around My Shoulders is a protest dance. It's inspired by the music and the rhythms of Southern Negro chain gangs. And it's full of anger. It's always full of dreams, too, and hopes of freedom and women, because you're in prison, so you can't have access to that. So he intertwines that into his work. And he's always trying to make a statement about life. And he makes you look at things we don't want to pay attention to, that we'd rather forget or prefer to forget. He's a very humanistic choreographer. He uses the narrative and deals with strong emotions through dramatic characters. I said that well, didn't I? I see if you were listening. Just taking a look at his style, there was this big thing that happened in the 80s. What year was I? 89. They had this black choreographers moving forward in the 21st century. And it was great, and all these choreographers came together. They had these panel discussions. I think I mentioned this before, about what is black dance. And is black dance black subject matter, or is it just a black person doing dance? So it was all this banter back and forth, and some people were offended, and some people, just went back and forth. And Donald McKell was just like, it's just movement. It's just people making choreography. And if the subject matter happens to be based around African American material, then it is. So I remember that because people were kind of irritated with him. They wanted, him to speak a little bit strongly about it being more black material. But he doesn't necessarily exclude Negro material, as we would call it, even in his earlier works. But as he goes on, he's trying to find work that's going to speak to the entire people. So he's humanistic. And all of his works deal with abstractions of people laughing and suffering and living and protesting, something that you as the audience member can connect to. His recent works in these last couple of years have been based around street gangs and sexual politics, or House of Tears is another piece he created based on the Perón reign over in Argentina. So it's just amazing. It's amazing to watch him work, and as a choreographer, who's still moving, I wonder, golly, when I get to be 70, am I still going to be able to, use my stick? But he's fascinating. He's fascinating watching verbally how he cues his dancers, and they're just right there with him. It's amazing. So even though he's politically not always satisfied, the critics are not always politically satisfied with what he says or does. The fact has never been that it concerned him. He really could care less about what the critics thought. He says that he creates a body of work that represents his own deepest continuing preoccupation with life, which I think is quite well said. Some other things I want to mention about him is his work in film and TV and stage acts, and I'll just mention a couple of works. Early on in his Broadway credits are Golden Boy, Dr. Jazz. Remember Sophisticated Ladies? Okay. He was one of the 4 choreographers of that. He also worked on, I'm taking you back now, the Ed Sullivan Show. Some of you young kids, you don't know what this is. The Bill Cosby special, Marlo Thomas, remember her? Sorry. Free to Be You and Me, I remember that. And he has choreographed for films like The Great White Hope, Disney's Bedknobs and Broomsticks. JK, we got to get that for the kids. Charlie and the Angel, and he's done stage acts for Harry Belafonte and Tina Turner. I picked out 2 of the bigger names. So I'm going to show you a clip talking about Donald McKell and his work. It'll show a little clip of games and also Rainbow Around My Shoulders. It runs about 6 minutes.
The community notices most is the accessibility in the work of emerging black choreographers.
African American choreographers were stretching, really just pushing the edges of the envelope with what modern dance was. Now, the modern dance world had its look and had its feel and had its texture when they came in the door. You come out of the Graham era, the gray woolens era of Graham, and suddenly, instead of going to Greece
and using Greek myths, instead of going to India and using Indian dance, people went home and brought home to the theater in a way that was very, very meaningful, touching, and had this incredible visceral effect on the audience.
The impact of homegrown dance is evident in the work of another African-American choreographer, Donald McHale. McHale turns the street play he learned growing up in New York City into a dance he calls games.
I grew up in East Harlem. And East Harlem at the time of my youth there was very mixed. It had originally been a lot of Jewish families there, Italian families, and families from Puerto Rico and the Caribbean islands came in, and black families came in. I had friends in all these different ethnicities. When I did games, there was no instrumental music because I felt that the way I had played in the street was music being sung, chants, shouts.
I went downtown to get my grip. I come back home just to bully the skit, just to bully the skit, just to bully the skit.
Donnie McHale is the consummate storyteller in a lot of ways. He told stories about the things that were happening in the America that he knew.
Choreography by Donald McHale brings to mind for me a phenomena that we see actually across the arts in the 1950s, and I would think of it more, I guess I would use the term kind of a new realism, something more political, something more social.
I saw a cop walking down the street, swinging his billy and strutting his feet. He's gonna catch you, beat you hard, break all of your bones, so help me God.
A sense that there's inequality that also presents itself in society.
Well, it's early in the morning when I rise.
In Sketching in America, rarely danced on a concert stage, McHale advances the tradition inherited from Dunham and Primus, engaging audiences while exploring difficult themes. In Rainbow Round My Shoulder, he addresses the plight of men on a Southern chain gang.
I had heard chain gang songs from Leon Bibb singing in his recording, and I began to respond to those.
In those days, they were literally chained ankle to ankle, and they were rhythmically singing. And I was aware of the rhythm because it was very pronounced. I got a rainbow tied all around my shoulder. I got a rainbow tied all around my shoulder.
I got a rainbow.
Rainbow is the name that the prisoners give to the pickaxe which they carry over their shoulders, which is in the shape of an heart.
My Lord, I'm going home. Everywhere.
It was all about striking and punching and hard labor. There was anger in it, a lot of anger.
All through these songs, there's always this aspiration for freedom. And they always talked about women, something they were kept away from. So I said, the freedom is going to be in the shape of a woman.
I'm going downtown, gonna give each other brandy. Give it all to Nancy, keep her drunk and goosey all the time. Keep her drunk and goosey all the time. And while I'm downtown, gonna give you a sack of flour. Cook it every hour, keep my skin good and greasy all the time. Keep my skin good and greasy all the time. And if she says so, I'll never work no more. I'll hang around her shanty all the time.
When you look at Rainbow Round My Shoulder, you're looking at snapshots from his America. snapshot with a punchline. It was something that showed you not only what that life was like, but told you what that life did to the people who lived it.
In the early 50s,
Okay, Donald McKell, amazing. What Donald McKell and Tally Beatty did was offer up a new vocabulary of movement and acceptable subject matter for the concert stage during the 40s and 50s. And so did Alvin Ailey. My last artist I want to talk about today is Mr. Alvin Ailey, the founder and director of the Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater in New York City. Of course, he was born in Texas in the 30s, and then he eventually moved to Los Angeles, California at a young age. And he was in high school when he actually met Lester Horton. Lester Horton was a choreographer in Los Angeles, actually founded one of the earlier concert companies in the Los Angeles area because New York was the place to be. And started out with Lester Horton as like a stagehand, just working backstage, running crew, stage manager. And then he was given a scholarship by Lester Horton to train there with the company. And he stayed with Lester Horton and his company until 1953 when Lester Horton passed away. He was a little reluctant to dance, but his friends convinced him of that. And when he did study with Lester Horton, he focused on the Horton technique and also developing his weighty, kind of smoldering technical style that he has when he moves. He has a very big athletic body, so it's a lot of mass to be moving around. Of course, Christina would know that because we are always working with the football players. And anyway, I digress. What is my point? I don't know. I'd like to mention that he went to UCLA and studied Romance languages. And then he and his dancing partner, Carmen de Lavalla, which is one of the ladies you just saw in the clip, moved to New York City to perform in House of Flowers, which is a big Broadway production, which I think they'll talk about in the clip a little bit. It provided an opportunity for all African American dancers to be a part of this production. This is a first opportunity. One of the problems in New York City was there was a lack of opportunity or opportunities didn't present themselves enough for people to be able to perform, blacks to be able to perform. There was a limited amount of outlet for them. There were all these dancers, all these choreographers, nowhere to go. When he moved to New York City, he studied with leading choreographers and teachers like Martha Graham, Doris Humphrey, Charles Weidman. He studied dance composition with Doris Humphrey intensively, and he took ballet classes. So he had a nice wide variety background of choreography. He founded the Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater in the late 50s, and he did it because he wanted to provide an opportunity for black dancers to have some place to dance, and also black choreographers to showcase their work, and also it to be like a museum of black choreography. Although it was focusing on black dancers and black choreographers, it didn't limit itself to Asian American or Latin American dancers who wanted to audition for the company. So that wasn't even an issue at all. But he was very successful at establishing this. And the company started out with like 7 dancers, and I think they rehearsed for several months to put on their first show in the late 50, 58, 59, 60. And it was a really successful concert. And the 2 of the works that he premiered was Blues Suite. And Blues Suite was based around Barrel House Blues. Barrel House, it depicts the desperation and joys of people, a life on the edge of poverty. And I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with juke houses and things like that. We don't have those here. No fun anymore. But it was very highly theatrical, and it was very immediately accessible when you watch this particular piece. And the sections of it contained a lot of 20th century social dances. In his teaching style, he embraces all the techniques. He was one of the few choreographers who establishes a school and a company and embraces all these jazz and modern and ballet and African. And I don't think they have tap, but do you see what I'm saying? And then they teach history, and the school has expanded incredibly over the years in the company. He also in 1960 created Revelations, which is the most popular piece. And can you imagine, it's like becoming famous right away, and then you're like, I got to keep being famous. And so I'm sure he struggled with what kind of work he's going to create. But his saving grace was that he always chose work that you could connect to as an audience member in some way or some fashion. He is the foremost interpreter of African American experiences, and you see that in his piece Revelations. I'm going to show that to you today. Before I talk about Revelations, let me just kind of go through a little bit of his career, just in case you don't know. He has set many works, several pieces on his company. I'm trying to remember how many. I should have wrote it down, but I didn't. But he also went off and got major distinctions like honorary doctorate degrees from several colleges and universities. He's worked with the American Ballet Theatre, the Paris Opera Ballet, London Festival Ballet, Royal Danish Ballet. So he doesn't limit himself to where he can go. And this was actually kind of what influenced Twyla Tharp and a lot of other contemporary choreographers to branch out and cross over into the dark side of classical ballet. I'm kidding. Cross over and create work. And of course, that's all 60s, 70s where things become more blended over. So he's got several honorary doctorate degrees. His company and repertory celebrating their 50th anniversary. Provided the first company started out touring a whole lot because they needed to make money, so they were doing lecture demonstrations and just out there hitting the pavement. And so they didn't realize that they were actually gathering a large audience and educating people about concert dance. So I mean, they had tours in Australia, Asia, Paris and London and so forth. And Alvin Ailey's American Dance Theatre became the first American company to perform in the Soviet Union. So, by 1989, over 15 million people had seen the company. The Alvin Ailey American Dance Theatre is also very active in teaching their dancers about the history, composition. I mean, a very thorough sustainability in terms of educating their dancers. Again, two of the choreographers, Tally Beatty and Donald McKell, are two of the choreographers who set work on the Alvin Ailey American Dance Theatre. They also have works that they premiere by Catherine Dunham and Pearl Primus, and more current artists like Garth Fagan and Bill T. Jones, and the list, I can go on and on and on. But they provide opportunity. And they also provide opportunity for choreographic experience for their company members who retire out and want to perform. Let's see, what else would I like to tell you? I want to show you if you get a chance to go to New York, you got to swing by the Alvin Ailey American Dance. You got to go by the building and just hang out like in the front and stalk them like I do, you know. You're like, I went to the Paris Opera one time and they're like, "Are you still here?" I was like, "Yeah, I just want to see the tour one more time." I didn't get that part in the, you know, Patty Claus toe section, and anyway. So you have to go and see it. I mean, they've expanded themselves. They've got two companies. They've got the repertory company. They've got the school outreach program, educating dancers and students, and inspiring self-esteem and just really wonderful positive things and sharing the creative experience. So this clip that I'm going to show you, the last one actually, will be about the beginning of Alvin Ailey and his work with Carmen de Lavallade and his Revelations.
Hi, may I help you?
Yes, I hear Progressive has lots of discounts on car insurance. Can I get in?
I forgot to push play.
Are you a black modern dance was almost nil.
As a consequence, black dancers seek out any chance to perform. In 1954, a special opportunity surfaces, a Broadway musical which assembles African-American dancers from both coasts.
One of the really magical moments is when we got together for House of Flowers.
At that time, it was very rare to have a show, a musical, that was mainly with people of color, mainly with blacks. The dancers and the performers were very excited about something at last coming along that they could do.
From the West Coast, the show's choreographer invites Carmen de Lavallade and Alvin Ailey to dance in the production. Ailey and de Lavallade studied modern dance in Los Angeles with Lester Horton, a pioneer who established one of America's first integrated dance companies.
Alvin Ailey looked like a running back. If you saw him walk, You said you can't dance. But when he got on the stage, you had to take all that back.
All of a sudden, you saw the muscular ease in which he moved. And it was very sensual and almost cat-like, you know.
In time, Alvin Ailey comes to realize that there are far too few opportunities for the black dancer.
I felt immediately when I got to New York City the need for a modern dance repertory company where I could develop dancers as well as choreographers.
Alvin said, I want to start a company because there are too many black modern dancers who don't have a place to perform. And I really think it's time that we have a place.
Where black dancers could feel that what they did was important and had value. Alvin would talk about this. He would talk about his dreams. I heard Alvin Ailey's dreams before I heard Martin Luther King's dream. Alvin just opened his heart to most of us, and we began to listen because he had a kind of urgency.
I had lots of what I call blood memories. Blood memories about Texas, old blues and spirituals and gospel music and ragtime music and folk songs. So the first ballets that I made when I came to New York were based on those feelings.
It was dance on a shoestring in a big way. Just a small company with people from Broadway shows. Couldn't pay them for rehearsal time. And you got a chance to really see right there what made the Ailey dancer. It's a dancer who could do dance dramas. You had to be able to emote on stage. You had to be able to, at the same time, show that technique. You had this blend of modern, jazz, and ballet. He created, almost with an alchemy, he created this whole new way of dancing.
I knew only that they call the rising sun.
I think that the importance of Alvin Ailey is that he fuses the white modern dance tradition with that of Primus and Dunham. He calls his dance company the Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater. And it happens when we can no longer ignore the fact that America is a pluralistic society, and that in fact all of these folks deserve to be called American.
There was no money at all. If you love what you're doing, then it doesn't matter that you didn't get paid. It was something that we had to do. My first payment from Alvin was a note and a flower. That was it. A thank you note and a flower.
He said to me that he wanted to give a concert, and I said, oh God, Alvin, I'd love to help you, whatever you want me to do. You know, tell me and I'll do it. And that's how it started, and I did everything then but dance. He knocked out the word can't, you know, do. The slightest suggestion that there's a way to do it. And we worked for 6 months to create Alvin Ailey's show. We used to rehearse at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 1 o'clock, costume fittings. No one thought anything of it. I mean, this was just the way that it had to be done. If you wanted to perform then, you had to use what was available to you. There were no rehearsal studios, nothing like there is now. I mean, it was just a different world.
The dance that gels during the months of rehearsal is a suite titled Revelations, based on the spiritual music of Ailey's early childhood. The spirituals, Ailey said, were the first music I could almost see.
The very first sequence, which has become a kind of signature thing, with those arms reaching up like Gothic cathedrals, very much in the spiritual, reaching up, out, in a kind of anguish.
I think it was one of those things that just poured out of him. I think it's all that stuff that that had built up in Alvin, and it just all came out.
Alvin Ailey had the ability to give you a little bit, and then you took that little bit and took it inside. It's a powerful piece of imagery that's created very quickly for you. Does an artist like Alvin Ailey know that that's going to be universally seen? For Alvin to come up with ladies sitting with their fans on a stool is just an absolute masterpiece of capturing something you would see in black churches. You would see these ladies very dressed with huge hats, and the fans would be all in rhythm. You could look down a pew line and they would all have the same rhythm. Now for Alvin Ailey to pick up on a thing like that,
The performance went very well, we thought, and we all seemed to know what we were doing. And the end of the piece came, and the curtain came down, and we were standing behind the curtain, holding hands, ready to take our bow, and there was dead silence in the audience. They brought the curtain up, and as they brought the curtain up, the audience jumped to their feet, and you just heard this roar, this deafening roar of bravos and applause and stamping and banging on the seats. It was just deafening. And we just sort of like, we looked around like, what's going on? Well, just bow. Bowed, and we bowed. About 10 curtain calls.
And when it was over, no one wanted to leave. They almost asked for an encore to repeat. It's a powerful dance which in fact expresses to humanity the common nature of all of humanity.
Alvin Ailey draws upon that Africanist use of the body. He draws upon that Africanist spiritualism, that African American spiritualism, and so many themes and elements that African American dancers had been exploring up to that point. And in Revelations, we see these things come alive on the concert stage in such a powerful artistic statement that modern dance would never be the same again.
Yes, I know you have this one. Oh my goodness, guys, a couple of things I just want to say to you because I promised to do this and leave on time. Lock the door. No. Just to reiterate Alvin Ailey's style. I mean, he's based in the Horton technique, but and you see these beautiful, long, stretched out bodies. There's nothing like the Horton technique. It's something I love. The diagonal tensions in the core of the body, the center of the body, is the focal point. His work reflects modern and jazz and African and ballet, the Horton technique, the Graham technique, the Dunham technique, all kinds of ethnic forms. You can see that in his work. And he draws on the human experience and the Negro experience. But his work, he also has works that are very abstract and plotless, like Lark Ascending and Night Creature. There's several works that he's created in his career that are just amazing, and there's always something in his program for everybody. But that company and that school continues to foster his original idea of being able to pave the way for artists to showcase their work and for dancers to be able to perform. It's one of the bigger ones. His works are also very lyrical and very theatrical. I want to say that just something he said in the New York Times, I'm trying to show the world that we're all human beings, and that the color of our skin is not important. It's what is important is the quality of our work. So I think if we could just think that way, I'm sure all of us do, but everybody outside the room might not. That would be the essence of living day to day. Upon his death, Judith Jamison became the director of the Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater. She was honored with the BET Awards, not just recently, and has just done a fantastic job. I'd talk a little bit more about him, but for sake of time, I'm going to stop. I do want to show the opening sequence of Revelations. Are you guys okay with that? It runs at like 3 minutes, and then if you need to leave. Whoa. Too high? That's going to be loud.
What is the date of this performance? It's fairly recent, though.
This one, I think, is in the 80s. The original was in the 60s, 1960. If I'm not mistaken, I think this is 89.
And that's what we saw some of the black and white clips of earlier.
The black and white clips are the 60s. The original, yeah. The original cast. Oh, should I close this?
I'll just make it.
I have to go somewhere. View. Where's it at? Thank you. Okay, I didn't take my classes at IS. 2 minutes till, so I thought I'd leave just 2 minutes for you guys to ask me questions.
He died so young. What were the circumstances?
I actually don't. I think it was age related, but I really don't know. I'd have to check my facts on that one. Any questions? So this is in the library, Z. Smith Reynolds Library. If you have nothing else to do one day, you can just come and get this DVD out and take a look at it. Revelations. Actually, just look under Alvin Ailey, and then there's a series of tapes, and there's